All right, we are live for a Friday edition of the Mike and Mario Show. Excited to be back. Looking forward to glancing over all the news and stories from this prior week, and then also talking about what could be coming up ahead in the week ahead. So, Mario, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Mike, and you?
I am doing excellent. It's Friday again. It's time to get ready to dial back as best as we can, but try to just walk through this past week and make some sense out of it. And so, looking forward to doing that, my friend. So, want to tip off with, I guess, the CPI and the economic data information. How about you start off with that one?
Yeah, so we've had the last 2 months, CPI has come out a lot higher than the expectation. I think last month was expected 3.2%. It came out 3.6. This month, the number yesterday was expected at 4.6, and it came out at 5. And it doesn't surprise me because a lot of these economists, they don't understand inflation. And I've seen that today, there's a lot of articles out there. One of them is on investing.com, and it says that the stock market is going up and bond yields are going down because inflation fears have abated already. So what they're thinking is they're looking at purely commodity prices as if they were separate from the world. They think commodities will drop in the next 12 months just because they've gone up so much. But if you look at the charts of the CRB, the low we had last March was like a multi-decade low. So I think it will surprise people on the upside. I think commodities are going to keep going up. We're nowhere near the highs from 2011.
Yeah.
And I think they've got it backwards. Commodities and other costs don't cause inflation. They're the consequence of all the money printing that the Fed has been doing. Well, since '08, they accelerated it, of course, and other central banks last year. And they're going to have to keep doing it because they have to keep playing this game that the economy is not as good as we thought. So we're going to have to keep printing. Yeah. But I'm not. I've always said that the inflation is baked in the cake, is the increase of money and credit, and I think they're going to be proven wrong. And we saw yesterday, though, Stan Druckenmiller, famous hedge fund manager, he actually emailed the guys at CNBC, and he said that the Fed is basically manipulating the market. He didn't use that term. He was more diplomatic. He said there is no market because some of you might know, and you might know that I worked in the bond markets for 20 years. And in the 90s, if we had a number like this, the bond prices would have dumped and the yields would have gone up 10 or 15 basis points. But what did yields do yesterday? Well, they dropped 3 or 4 basis points below 150. And even if the Fed is right and the CPI comes back to like 2%, investing in the 10-year at 1.5 is still a bad proposition. Let alone investing it when the CPI is 5%. So it's. I think time will tell whether I'm wrong or they're right about the price rises. I think they're trying really hard to more of a psychological thing, trying to manage perception. They think that if they can tell people that there is no inflation, people will react differently. But I think the horses have left the barn in terms of inflation, and they're not going to be able to do anything about it.
Right. So if the inflation is transitory, it's temporary, it's nothing to really concern ourselves with, is what they want us to believe. And as you mentioned, what they're saying, that commodities will eventually go back down. How about the other asset classes that have been predetermined and chosen to continue to go up, such as the housing market, as well as the stock market? Should those come down as well to really support that narrative that they want us to believe?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you look at the relative value of commodities to technology, commodities are still hugely undervalued, and these guys are coming out and saying, "Oh, commodities are overvalued; they're going to collapse." Maybe lumber has collapsed a bit, but even lumber, I would venture to say that it's gonna hold and it's actually gonna go make new highs later on this year, and people are gonna be shocked.
Yeah.
And it's just a reflection of the dollar. I think the dollar is ready to keel over, even though for some reason, today it's rebounded a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The dollar, I still think the dollar is, the long-term, longer-term trend is still lower for the next 3 to 4 years. And don't forget the fiscal stimulus part of it.
Mm-hmm.
We're still looking at multi-trillion-dollar deficits.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think the whatever the most recent relief bill is still on the table. It hasn't been even talked about lately, to my knowledge. I think that they settled for 1.9 or 2 something that Biden threw out there, and so that's still on the table, and it's still looking to be pushed forward. So that's just on the fiscal side. And then one of the things I want to mention that in reference to what you just said about the dollar, as far as the Dixie, the trade weighted dollar. So I read something on Twitter a moment ago where someone mentioned that with the now the SDR host, and Macron encouraging the selling of gold would support the euro, driving the euro lower for the exports for the EU region. And also along with that, a lot of people mentioned that because all the global debt is denominated in dollars, there'll always be a demand for dollars. And so there's not enough dollars out there to meet demand for all the debts that are having issues. So could we be in a position where the dollar is able to still remain relevant and needed by nations because they still have to pay back the current debts in dollars?
Yeah, I guess to some extent. But if people start dealing less and less in dollars, like Russia and China are doing, you will need to borrow less and less dollars, right? You're going to need to borrow more rubles and Chinese yuan. So I don't buy that. People will probably still have to borrow dollars, but the direction of the dollar versus the major currencies, as per the dollar index, I've looked at it many times. There's like a 7 to 9 year cycle up, a 7 to 9 year cycle down. And according to the study I've done, and I've made videos about it, we topped in January 2017 at 103.82. Last year we went up to 103, so we didn't make a new high. So we have at least it should be at least a 7-year down leg, or even 9. So if you take 2017 plus 7, it's 2024 to 2026. So I think the dollar is still a long way from bottoming versus the major currencies. As per the euro, yes, Macron is talking about selling some gold to help Africa. One thing I would say that would help Africa would be to buy gold, to buy commodities, because they have a lot of that. But I think Macron is doing that because the bullion banks, and I spoke about this in my video this morning, when Gordon Brown sold the gold in 1990, or he pre-announced it, looking back, a lot of people realized that the bullion banks were in trouble. There's a short squeeze in the price. And what that does by selling the country's gold, it basically goes to the banks so they can cover their paper shorts, their leasing. And I think the same thing is happening now. This is not about Africa. He's using it as a cover. He's a former Rothschild banker. Gordon Brown has close relationship to the Rothschilds. It's all about the gold price, that they're losing control of it. But it's not going to work, because every time they do this kind of shenanigan, the gold price goes up. And if anything, if he really wanted to help Africa, he would give some of the gold reserves. He wouldn't sell it. He'd just ship it to Africa and say, here you go. There's 10,000, 100 metric tons for you guys. Do whatever you want with it. But it's going to go through the banks. This gold is going to go through the banks.
And that's the thing. When I read that article there, Macron talking about, Africa needs a new deal. I'm like, wow, a new deal. Who will put together the structure of that new deal?
The Rothschilds, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Who will it benefit more? And if they really wanted to help Africa, you would probably figure out a way to remove yourself from Africa, let Africa develop itself, allow the African people to basically control their own resources, because the continent of Africa is literally the wealthiest plot of land on the earth that is untapped. And that's why I think there's a heavy Chinese influence with this the Belt and Road Initiative and everything connected with that, because they want in on that as well. So that's why they have been doing all this funding and development in that region. So they're not trying to help the African people, that's for sure.
Yeah, the Chinese are heavily involved in Africa as well, and
extremely.
The problem is that, yeah, I agree with all that you said about Africa having to go at it alone, but there's a lot of corrupt politicians in Africa too,
everywhere,
and they get paid off by these people, you know. So like in Latin America, it's the same thing. It's sad but true.
Yeah, and to speak on that a little bit further, talking about corruption within those nations there, I'm gonna put an article on the screen here, that something I came across just today. A Nigeria central bank plans a CBDC pilot launch before the end of 2021. So when you have African nations jumping on board with what the World Economic Forum, BIS globalists want, that lets us know who actually runs that country, because why would they want a central bank digital currency other than have their own sovereign currency, preferably backed by the resources of their land, given the fact that that's a very, very blessed region right there with resources.
Yeah, there's an economist. He's a German economist, but I think he's based at the University of Southampton here in England. His name is Richard Werner. You mentioned earlier, everyone has to borrow in dollars, but that's not true. If Brazil or Argentina or Nigeria or any country wants to develop, why do they have to borrow dollars? Why not just create their own development bank and help their own industries in Brazil, in Nigeria? So that's the other thing I would say. It's a misconception that people have to borrow in dollars to do anything. But I agree. This guy's quite interesting, Richard Werner.
Yeah, he did that documentary, the Japanese yen, or the whatever that. What was it?
Ministry of Yen or something. Yeah. It's very interesting.
Yeah, great explanation on the central bank development over the last decade plus, using Japan as a primary test bed for QE. QE started in Japan.
I mean, I don't agree with everything that guy calls for, but I agree about the fact that the developing countries, they don't necessarily need to borrow the dollars. I think the Chinese do it the right way. If people want to invest in China, they come and they take equity positions in the Chinese companies. The Chinese are not borrowing dollars. But unfortunately, the major economists, the advisors in all these developing countries, a lot of them have been educated in the United States, and they've been put under this mindset that the dollar is as good as gold still, which we know is far from.
Now, one of the things that you mentioned about borrowing in dollars. Now, given the fact that the entire world has been subjected to the dominance of the dollar because of the world reserve status, any nation that tries to go off that standard, petrodollar, the debt dollar standard, whatever standard we want to give it, any nation that decided to opt out of that, except for probably China and Russia, because I think they're the two biggest powerhouses that can stand their ground against the attacks of the globalists or whatnot. So we'll see. I want to segment that in a minute. But at this current moment, all nations' debts, and it's all geared towards the developing nations, the African nations, second world, third world countries, because those are ones that have been heavily saturated with debt. And so it looks like the shift is going to be to the SDR. Like, that's the preferred reserve transfer mechanism that they want everyone to usher into as a form of liquidity in the midst of another crisis. But once again, it's the same IOU.
Nothing.
Currencies.
I mean, John Exter called the fiat dollar IOU nothing.
Yeah.
And He called the SDR, who owes you nothing. We don't even know who owes you yet. But I would say that what they've been doing in the less developed countries by lending them a lot of money
Mhm.
and then pulling the plug and then taking over their resources and
Mhm.
infrastructure, it's
Yeah.
what they're doing to us in the Western world. They're indebting us as well.
Yeah.
Uh, and they're going to pull the plug and they're going to own everything. They're going to own all the housing. They're already owning all the housing, the hedge funds, the private equities.
Mhm.
So they're using the same playbook. It's the economic hitman playbook that they've used in the less developed countries. They're using it now in our countries.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Here's
it's
a little
not good, man.
Here's a little quote I grabbed from John Exter. It says, "We are in a
Yeah.
world of irredeemable paper money, a state of affairs unprecedented in history."
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and I think that comment must have been made a few decades ago, and we're still in it.
yeah, yeah. Now, so here's the biggest issue, and this is where I want to actually find out, get your thoughts, because I was trying to put the pieces of this puzzle together myself, and it looks like on the surface there's as I say here, a monetary tug of war, because we have the chosen mechanism for the next reserve, which is the SDR. However, whether it's going to be a digital based or whether it's going to be backed with, put some gold in there, some Bitcoin, whatever it's going to be comprised of. And then you have Russia and China, which have made it clear that they value gold at an extremely high value. And they're ready to probably reset the value of gold at some point as a part of their plan. And then we have the global attention is being given to Bitcoin right now with El Salvador. And so I want to find out, who will win? Will the free market win and gold rise, or if the globalists have their way with the reset, will the SDR win, or will are nations sincere and really wanting Bitcoin as legal tender on their balance sheet or part of
Yeah,
their reserves?
yeah. I mean, it's difficult to say who's going to win. I don't think, unfortunately, the free market will win,
Mm,
but we can continue to be our own central banks
right.
and choose the currency that you want. You might want dollars, paper dollars. It's your choice. You might want Bitcoin or Litecoin, but I'm going to stick to gold and silver because I think they've proven themselves over the last few thousand years.
Mhm,
As per, yeah, I'm not too sure the Chinese and the Russians are too interested in free market, but
mhm.
they do understand that gold and silver are real money. So in a way, I favor. I hope that their plan succeeds because I think the people who run the West they're not interested in sound money. They're interested in keeping the general public enslaved with
Mhm.
fiat currency. And even I don't trust their CBDCs
Right.
as far as I could throw them. They're even more dangerous than what we have now, because at least now we can still hold on to some of that currency,
Mhm.
through holding some paper notes. But under the digital central bank digital currencies, you have no access to it except through digitally, and they can turn it off anytime they want.
Yeah. It's
They
fully.
can't turn off your banknotes, even though
Yeah.
they can change them. And how like they did in India a few years ago, they only gave people a couple weeks, and they really screwed people there. I mean, they've
Yeah.
done it in Switzerland, and they're doing it right now. But they've given people a couple of years to exchange the old notes.
Yeah.
But digitally, it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, I just saw that Switzerland is canceling was it the pre 2009 or 2008, or no, the earlier version of the Swiss franc. They're canceling those versions of that. So I saw something about that, and then
Yeah,
also
they're canceling, but they're issuing new
new
ones.
ones.
They're
Yeah,
not. They're not doing away with their paper money,
yeah, but
with their banknotes, because the Swiss still use a lot of banknotes. They don't like using cards. They still
yeah,
use a lot of cash.
yeah. Now, if I'm not, well, I didn't dive too deep into it, but I know their smallest notes. I want to say it was a 20 and a 50 or something like that, and I think.
Uh,
No, go ahead. What's the smallest
10,
note?
10 is the smallest note.
And
You
I
have
think they're doing away with that, right?
I'm not sure. They might be. I have to ask my my sister or my nephew. But they also have a 5 Swiss franc coin. And I
Hmm.
remember years ago they had a 1,000 franc note. They have a 500 franc note, a 200, a 100, a 50, a 20, and a 10. And there's a good story about my sisters. Back in the 80s, they were
Hmm.
walking along in Geneva and outside on the sidewalk. And there wasn't many people around, and they just saw a 500 franc note on the pavement.
Hmm.
And they looked around, there's no one. So they picked it up and went shopping. So yeah,
Yeah.
but
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I remember, as I mentioned before, I had a chance to live in Switzerland for a brief moment, and I remember the culture shock of how expensive things were. And I had I had a grocery store beneath my little apartment there, and I remember going and just seeing the prices on the shelves, just seeing the prices and what I was willing to spend. It definitely deterred what I put in my basket because it was expensive as I don't know what over there.
yeah.
Oh my goodness. But speaking of which, for those that are tuning in, we have the Mike and Mario show, and I forgot we're streaming live, Mario, because we can get caught up and not remember we have people out there that's watching live in real time. So as always, if you're enjoying the back and forth, hit the thumbs up button, show your support for the channel, and then also throw out some questions in the chat at just highlight at rethinking a dollar to stand out. I'll ask them, and then phone lines. I saw we missing a couple of calls, but I don't want to take calls just yet because it'll disrupt our thoughts. But I want to piggyback more into this tug of war, because I personally hope that we, the people, are able to take as much control as we can in the form of holding gold and silver as our primary anchor. And I'm realizing I'm watching all this restructuring happening around us with central banks running to gold. They're adding gold to their reserves. So we, the people, have to, of course, copy that model. Add gold and silver to our reserves as well. But then again, if the globalists have their way, the SDR is going to be the chosen international mechanism. CBDCs will be for the people domestically, and then that's all she wrote. But then also we have this whole digital asset space, and that's why I think this whole El Salvador situation, because as I mentioned, the BIS and IMF had just come out recently expressing some of their displeasure in the fact that it appears to be that that El Salvador has sprung this on them out of the blue. Now, what's the chance you think that this is a genuine grassroots movement from their president there, or this is a distraction mechanism to keep our attention off of Basel III as well as
Yeah.
all that other stuff that's brewing?
Well, first of all, I don't know much about the situation in El Salvador.
Mm-hmm.
I know that it's a very poor Central American country.
Yeah.
I don't know how the politics there is going, but I would say this is like the president of El Salvador
Yeah.
trying something new. He's desperate, so he's going for Bitcoin. And the BIS, of course, and the IMF, they're concerned because they don't want other countries to follow suit.
Yeah.
But I would add as well that El Salvador has the US dollar as legal tender.
Right.
So I'm not sure why the BIS isn't concerned about that, because the dollar has been, has lost 98% of its value in the last 100 years. Why would El Salvador want to have the dollar as legal tender? But I tweeted out this week when this news came out that the best thing that, what I would have done if I wanted to help the people of El Salvador, and I was the president of El Salvador, which I probably never will be, of course, but I would have looked to abolish all legal tender laws. Ron Paul has always talked about that. The way to have a free market in money is to have no legal tender laws, to allow the public to use whatever they want. But as money and currency, the reason they don't do that is that they wouldn't be able to control things. They wouldn't be able to tax you as easily. So I would say that if El Salvador really wanted to help the general public, they would, yes, allow them to use Bitcoin if they wanted, but they should allow them to use anything and scrap legal tender laws.
Yeah.
And I bet you they'd start using gold and silver as well.
Yeah, and that'd be great for us, the people. But yet, unfortunately, politicians are all bought and paid for. We got the G7 nations meeting right now, and I looked at a screen of 7 people with strings above their heads. They're there to discuss the, how's things going with the mandatory stuff. You guys, you guys doing good with that? And
actually, someone noted that in that picture there are 9 people, even though it's the G7.
oh no,
Because
I shared it, but I didn't even see it.
I think they have 2 people from the Euro president and the Euro Commission. So it's a G7, but they have 9 people. So they can't even figure out their maths.
So let me because I did share that picture. And then, and speaking of which, we showed us here. I want to actually touch on that because I did a video.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 people.
Yeah. So I saw the video and I didn't get a chance to look at the faces of everybody. So I can picture out a couple. Or I see Boris, I see Biden, I see the Trudeau.
Well, I'll tell you, the woman with the back to us, she's the president of some Euro Commission or Parliament. Then the guy next, she's German, Ursula von Leyen.
Okay.
And the guy next to her on her left is a Belgian guy who's probably president of some other European thing. And all the other guys are, you got Mario Draghi there. He's now the prime minister of Italy.
Yeah.
And then next to him, you got, what's his name? Jacques Castro.
Who? Where?
Some Canadians call him Castro.
Oh.
Because the rumor is he's Fidel Castro's illegitimate son. And then you got and then you got Sleepy Joe there, and then you got Boris Johnson.
That's your guy right there. Yes.
Yeah. And then you got slap my face Macron.
Pimp slap.
Yeah. And then you've got what's her name? Angela Merkel.
Yeah.
And then the Japanese guy. I don't even know what his name is.
Yeah. So yeah, these are the people meeting today. And of course, and here's another thing I want to touch on, like the fact that, and that's why I called them, G7 puppets, because they're not leaders to me. Like,
all the things they're talking about have been decided like weeks ago.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And so it's like literally when I saw that picture, I'm thinking like, man, that's probably like, the Davos / Bilderberg group, they probably all got the scripts handed to them as to what the topics will be, what they got to touch on. And and as you mentioned, in our text, whatever, it's a PR stunt. Like literally, you got these people standing on stage by the ocean, and they're just standing there looking all leadership like. And I'm thinking like these people are not leading nothing. Like if people really knew what was going on behind the scenes and knew how all these people were bought and paid for and all that stuff, they would no longer be considered leaders. They would probably be tried for treason and
Unfortunately, that's the way the world has worked for thousands of years.
Man. So I want to actually touch on real quick because I think I did a video earlier myself about how this whole Bitcoin El Salvador thing and all the mainstream narratives for the first 2 days after that was announced, after Monday and Tuesday, was about legal tender. And then I reference how I believe we'll find out, depending on the U.S.'s response to El Salvador providing a competition directly to the dollar, if whether or not it's genuine or not. But I mentioned that my thought is it's all geared towards opening up the discussion towards the need to tweak the legal tender laws. And so I think that this summer, this fall, especially Congress here, Jerome Powell already made it clear that, with the help of Congress, they need to work together to make it possible for the Federal Reserve to come out with their CBDC. So I think this is a setup for that. And then I also mentioned that, the legal tender laws here in the U.S. has not really been amended or changed since the creation of the Federal Reserve, when it put into the actual legal tender code here, this little phrase here, because prior to that, United States coins and currency were the only things considered legal tender. And that was made up of about 7 different options that we, the people, had, whether it be certificates, silver certificates, gold coins, silver coins, U.S. States notes, Federal Reserve notes, and bank notes. So we had 7 options then. And so, as you mentioned earlier, we're doing away with legal tender. We had a lot of options back then. But I think they're going to put a phrase in here that says something about and digital currencies and central bank digital currencies.
They could do anything, Mike. They could change. And it's interesting because I've read about the the dollar and the silver dollar, and back in the early 1800s, apparently people were still using the Spanish Spanish mill dollar,
Yeah.
the Spanish dollar in the early 1820s in the U.S. So you could use any money you wanted. It was free. You
Yeah.
could use European gold coins, or people accepted everything.
Yeah.
Uh,
I,
I think what the Constitution was trying to do
uh-huh.
by having the Coinage Act is just giving the idea of what the federal government would deal in, that
Yeah.
would be gold and silver.
Yeah.
But I don't even think we need legal tender laws in the U.S. or anywhere else, because I would gladly accept $20 gold eagles here in the UK. I would accept German gold, German marks, or silver coins from anywhere in the world,
Yeah.
because they're all the same. Gold and silver are the global money and currency. Some people say that gold and silver aren't currency, but they do circulate as well. They used to circulate as currency through coins.
Yeah.
So
Well, I was going to say something about the coin. Oh, so speaking of which, how people, the Spanish milliards, or the thaler before
yeah,
then
the
is
Spanish
what,
dollars, pieces of 8.
yeah. So, and I think a part of this, because this United States code here I did a little research. It was first introduced in 1873 or so, right after the greenback was officially became the legal tender paper currency version of money. And then, of course, this stuff came following. But yet this little line here says foreign gold or silver coins are not legal tender for debts, because that was an option, obviously, because they had to stipulate that no, we're no longer going to accept that. And this is around 1874 or so when this was.
So you see, for almost 100 years,
yeah,
Americans could use whatever gold or silver they wanted. It wasn't just the U.S. gold or silver coins.
Yeah, very true. And then to piggyback on that, here's the Coinage Act of 1792 and all the options that we had from equals quarter equals dollars, quarter dollars, desmi, half desmi, cents, and half cents. Could you imagine a half cent? Like it was 5.5 penny weights, or 8.55 grams of copper. Like half of a penny was that. I mean, think about the life and the quality of life and the cost of life, to where that little half of a penny it carried some weight to it. It's purchasing power as well.
Well, and they didn't even have the double legal $20 piece yet, because that came up after the California gold rush. It was.
Man. Yeah, so we've come a long way to the point where now they're talking about digital versions of it solely. So, oh my goodness. So while we at it, let's take some calls, or let's take some questions. We got a couple more minutes, so feel free to, as I mentioned, I'll try to go back into the chat. Mario, if you don't mind looking at the chat as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention Gur Olgi. He's one of my followers. He's on the chat, and he's in Norway, and he said that right now they've got the midnight sun. Mm-hmm. So there's no so it's a nice place to be, Norway, right now. No, it's day the whole time. James Peter Millward, he's an artist. I bought some art off him. He follows my channel. He's here in England. He says, I have actually accepted Britannia silver coins as part payment of my art recently. I can tell you that's me, actually. I bought a painting from him. I paid him half fiat currency and half silver. And so you see, you can use your silver.
Yeah, very true. So I'm not sure. Are you able to click on them and they pop up on the screen, or just me? Because I'm trying to find.
I can just see them.
Okay, because I want to click on them as you're mentioning them. So here's something here from Mark Carr. Says, how long before local grocery stores will have one line for precious metals, junk, silver, etc., and the other line for paper money, or they stop taking paper money when it's so worthless? How long?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that would be great, but the way things are right now, it doesn't look like that will ever happen. But never say never. Never say never.
Very true, very true. So here's something here from James. It says, what the West did to Libya and Gaddafi was a disgrace and a crime against humanity. Our leaders really have run out of ideas. Yeah, and that's the thing. They've run out of ideas, and they've become outright bold and just cocky with it. They're able to throw stuff in our face and they're not being any pushback because they own the media. All the media is owned, and now they've actually went a step further with all the social media platforms providing these so-called fact checkers that are literally just paid writers that are told to just somehow, some way turn a lie into truth. And
they're mostly supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, by the Open Society.
Yeah.
You look at all the people who sponsor these fact checkers.
Yeah.
They're all globalists.
Yeah. Here's something here. BlackRock and State Street own most of the companies in America. Yeah, I saw an article about that one. What else we got here? Let's keep it moving. So yeah, throw out a question or two if you guys want, and we can answer it. And then let me see. I see a lot of thoughts out here. A lot of thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think I can click into the comments.
Okay.
And
well,
bring them over. But anyway,
I'll try to pop it up as I can. But anyway, we can keep moving.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, so what are we looking at? It's June 11th. We're 2 weeks or so away from the whole Basel III, that June 28th date. Do you see, the 29th, 30th, anything happening with that? Or is it literally can it blow over, give or take?
I think we just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
There's so much speculation to it. And if something happens, great. If it doesn't, fine. I'll still keep trying to add on to my stack of silver and gold. Gold is getting expensive.
Yeah.
So.
Ann says, "Can I just say it's very depressing to think that they can just keep printing money forever?" I don't think they can. They can't do it forever, because there'll come a time where, and that's what I think they realize that their printing or creation in the way that it's been done before is coming to an end. That's why they're trying to rebrand it with the CBDC so they can get out of the paper printing business, because they're going to take it to that next level of being able to actually program the currency so that they'll give you a time limit. So you won't be able to actually save that for long term, because it'll hurt them more. So they're going to tell you when and how and where you can spend it at. So
there will be no privacy as well. It will be all interconnected.
Yeah.
And that's why, I know Bitcoin has done really well price-wise, and cryptocurrencies have, but gold and silver are the only thing that you can hold in your hands, and it's really private and it's very liquid. You can exchange it. But so.
so low blood pressure says Mike screening calls. So because I usually answer from my computer, but it's not, my volume's not working, so I'm answering from my phone now. So I've missed some calls. So give me a call back, and I'll make sure I pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
We'll be here for the calls.
So what's coming up in the near future, other than just the obvious? Anything else
like you mean some events, I guess.
Yeah, some events.
Next week we got the FOMC meeting. I think it will be an important one because of what's happening with the CPI.
Yeah.
I think it starts Wednesday and it ends on Thursday. There will be a press conference and announcements.
Yeah.
What else? Yeah, here in the UK, we're supposed to go back to not 2020 on the 21st of June, but they're finding more and more excuses to keep the restrictions, probably for another month. And then in that next month, I'm sure they'll find another excuse, maybe to lock people down again. What I think is happening is that not only here, but in Europe and in the US, they're seeing that the economies are not doing well, and they need another excuse to come up with more stimulus. So I have a feeling this COVID thing, or it could be a cyber pandemic, things are not going to get better, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to pump up the stimulus even more. And yes.
All right. So we have a call here. Let's get this call. Hello, Carlos. Where are you calling from?
I got through, Mike. It's low blood pressure, Corpus Christi. How's it going, guys?
LBP, doing good, man. What's on your mind?
Hey, look, I had a question for you guys real quick. I'll take it off air. Okay, when the IMF issues the SDR, does that create more currency units because it's a basket of currencies, or does the IMF have to like get 69, cents or whatever for the dollars? Does it have to get those dollars into some kind of a ledger, or like does it have to hold it, or does it just issue more currency units? That's all I wanted to ask. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks. Mr. Mario, what are your thoughts on that? How will that
from what I know, and I could be wrong, but I think what they do, they just create the SDRs, right? And it's a portion in dollars and the other major currencies.
Yeah.
So they don't have to print dollars to create the SDRs. But what they will do, let's say they give $50 billion worth of SDRs to Africa.
Yeah.
And then they'll tell them, oh, now they allocate it to them, you see? And I think the way they allocate it to them is that, they tell them you can use part of this in dollars, part of it in euros, and so on and so on. So it's just created out of thin air. It's just written on or typed on the ledger.
Yeah.
But so the countries that issue the currencies that are in the SDR, they don't have to do anything. It's just the IMF that creates them.
Yeah, let me see.
I think they created 650 billion this year, haven't they? I mean, it was the biggest allocation of SDRs since the 08 crisis. They haven't really created that many. They still have quite a lot that they could create out of thin air again.
Yeah, and they definitely will. And so I actually had an article last night where I was talking about the SDR situation, just breaking down the current basket and how the weight value, the reciprocal sum, as they put, of what an SDR is made of. And so that's going to be interesting to see, because I think I'm not quite sure if that's all fully worked out yet, because everything is trending towards digital. Now, will they also try to utilize that digital format for the SDR structure? Because I'd assume they're going to be putting more contents within the basket, whether it be, more allocation of gold. The yuan is just recently added over the last, 3 years now. So I'm sure if China is going to cooperate with this global agenda reset situation, I'm sure they're going to want a bigger pie or bigger piece of the pie. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, is China and Russia on board with what's going on? Because of this whole, Hugo Sina's Price mentioned about Russia threatening the BIS type of stuff. See what I'm saying? Like, who's trying to run the show?
It's difficult to say, but the SDR will not be like, people won't use SDRs. It would just be a currency that is held by sovereign treasuries, and they will settle balance of payments, deficits, and surpluses. Someone asked me what I thought about Macron getting slapped. I thought that was great, really, and I wasn't surprised that it wasn't worse than a slap. So, and I heard that the guy not only said something like down with Macron, but he also mentioned, had something he said that is supposed to be pro-monarchy, like an old pro-French monarchy saying. So it's really interesting. He wasn't just against Macron, but he was pro-royalist, which is interesting.
Here's a thought here from the Thunder Sound. It says DTCC's FAST program, fast automated securities transfer from physical to digital, advancing the dematerialization of U.S. securities from physical to digital, advancing the dematerialization of securities. So that's a lot of words in that right there. But
you did really well reading that.
Thank you. I was trying. I got to really think of that one. But
digital. Yeah.
And some content creators focus on the DTCC and how they own everything and whatever. So
I don't think they actually, the DTCC doesn't own things. They hold. They're custodian. You see, you buy 1,000 shares of IBM for Mike. Mike, Rethinking the Dollar owns. Your broker will have that in your name, and then the broker actually those shares are held at the DTCC. But the DTCC doesn't own those shares. But I guess possession, you could argue, is 9/10 of the law.
Yeah. Now, as a part of that, I remember back in the day when I think it was one of the buildings in New York, when there's a major flood, in New York, hurricanes mysteriously just happened
Oh,
to
yeah.
up, and it flooded the basement out of the DTCCC,
Yeah.
DTCC, and all the files and paperwork, all that stuff happened to the vault. Somebody left the vault door open, on the day the hurricane in New York.
If that was I wonder if that was an accident.
Yeah,
or was maybe the World Economic Forum was sponsoring them.
Right. So they're trying to get rid of evidence or something like that. And so I'm not surprised to see that there is a push and, the need to go digital for their own sake, but also to remain controlled, because who owns all the servers, all the networks?
Yeah.
They own all that stuff and got people who own that stuff. So,
and I guess they could also, if someone misbehaves, they could just take all the securities that you have with the DTCC.
Yeah.
And give it to the central banks or whoever.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be hard to just make you go poof. If you don't participate, everything can go poof. And then on the last note here, I want to end off on this this little post that I made a moment ago, which is this video on this little situation right here. This is how bad things can get, of which, in the developed world on this side, we don't hear much about, but this is something that goes to show what the overall agenda is. So this is from RT. It says, no jab, no phone, unvaccinated to have SIM cards blocked, Pakistani's Punjab government says. So if you don't participate, they're going to try to clamp down on your life regardless. So, and it's a lot worse in nations where they never had true freedoms or anything already. So, we're going to be the last one standing, but they're definitely going to have to crack down if they want their plan to succeed. But God willing, it doesn't succeed. So we'll see, man.
Yeah. And just before we sign off, I saw a story, I think on Zero Hedge, that 170 hospital workers in Houston, Texas were suspended because they did not want to take the jab. So there you go.
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick. Let me put that suspended. I gotta spell suspended right. Let me see that, because I remember you mentioned that. Let me see if it pops up here, because that'll be something worthwhile. Okay, it is the very first tab. So, okay, so this is, Houston hospital suspends 170 workers for refusing to get it. So, and that's one of the things where it's emergency measures is authorized, is not approved, and so that fine line they no longer care about. So, but yeah, I'm sure everybody got a story or something close to home that they can share on the subject matter as well. So, because we're all in the same boat when it comes to this. So,
yeah, I'm just praying that Bo Pony is right, and there will be a Red Sea moment.
Yeah.
And Pharaoh will be defeated, but who knows?
Oh, man. Well, everybody, it has been great hanging out with us this afternoon. Hope you guys enjoyed and got a chance to get plugged into some things. And definitely next week, we're going to have more stuff to talk about. I'm sure moving forward, it's going to be a very heated summer. No pun intended there. But once again, Manico64 on YouTube. Go check him out. If you haven't already, go subscribe. Does good work every day. And then also, if you're new to RTD, Rethinking a Dollar, everywhere you can find it anyway. So, Mario, have a good weekend. And then looking forward to doing it again next week, my friend.
You have a great weekend, too. And I look forward to next Friday.
Definitely. All right, people. Be blessed. Be safe. See you guys later. Peace.